Let's bring him up.
And hey, we are live, folks, and we just decided to go. So I was saying, Bill ain't coming. You're supposed to laugh.
I told you I was coming.
Bill does not look happy. Bill, what's going on? How you doing, man?
Yeah, no, I told you I was coming.
I told you I was coming. Yeah, Bill does not look happy. Bill, what's going on? How you doing, man?
Yeah, no, I told you I was coming.
I told you I was coming. Bill, I think you need your headphones.
Yeah, I know.
Hey, so Bill, what do you think about this game? We'll start with Dr. Carroll first. And we used to call Bill Chackus Dr. Bill, right? Because he was Dr. Bill, right?
Yeah.
Hey, Vinny, have you ever met Bill Chackus?
I never met him, no.
Okay, no, he's
yeah. By the time Vinny was probably halfway through high school, Bill was in Arizona.
Yeah, that's right.
What year did you go to Arizona?
2014.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I was going through my
2000. Yeah, 2000. 2013. He went to Arizona because 2014 was his first year at the New York NFL draft, traveling from Arizona, and I know that because we shared a hotel room at the Days Inn.
Yeah, I was in 9th grade at that time.
Yeah. So there you go. Yeah. Okay, so anyway, we're starting. Bill, what do you think of this contest?
I mean, it's playing out pretty much exactly as expected. An anemic offense. The Steelers have really struggled all year long to establish anything, and that's hence the, fire Matt Canada chants you're hearing even at non-NFL events. Basketball games, baseball games, the Olympics next, I guess. There is a great amount of enmity and vitriol building up amongst the black and gold fan base towards Matt Canada.
Do we even have dogs in Pittsburgh barking fire Matt Canada?
We probably do at this point.
I heard that somewhere.
I've also seen at Penguins games. I'm hearing it. I've seen it at Pirates games. Yep. I've seen it whenever it involves Pittsburgh of any context. It could even be at like a city hall. It still says "Fire Matt Canada." They really want that man gone. No, it doesn't matter where you are. They just want to let the world know that they want him gone as the Steelers offensive coordinator.
Well, it sounds like I can't see it, but we lost Bill for a second. But it sounds like there's a big play that was made. I can hear the roar of the crowd in the distance by the Steelers offense because Steelers are on offense. Don't quite know what happened here yet. Let's see here.
Right now, it's a stop of the third quarter, 12 minutes and 24 seconds. Titans are 13 against the Steelers, which have 10. Steelers have the ball right now.
Good call there, Vinny. So anyway, I'm going back. What I'm looking for right now is to see what Twitter is telling us about the game. What do you think of Will Levis?
I think Will Levis currently, last week he played really, really well, especially for a first ever game. This game so far, he hasn't thrown a touchdown or an interception, but he's been very accurate with the ball. He's been taking care of the ball pretty well. So far, even though there's no touchdowns from him, still so far a solid second performance, first one on a primetime stage. So yeah, not bad so far.
Bill, want to follow up on that?
Yeah, the most important thing that Benny just mentioned is not turning the ball over, not putting the ball in jeopardy. Both these teams have generally struggled. The advantage the Titans have had is at least they've had a consistent running game. Najee Harris has struggled to be effective this year. They've gotten a little more of Jalen Warren, who's the more explosive and quicker back. And then you add to that the loss of Freiermuth means that their best receiving threat, not named George Pickens, had not been on the field, and obviously they did get Deontay Johnson back last week, so he at least gives them someone who operates in the slot and can even kick out the Z and be effective. But this is a below average passing attack and a below average rushing attack. The Titans are not the Titans of old in terms of defense, but they still have some good players. They obviously moved Kevin Byard at the trading deadline. And Mr. Edmonds, who is extremely physically talented, struggles. He doesn't take the right angle. You saw that earlier. There was a first down the Steelers got because he took too flat an angle. He doesn't see things quickly. He's fast physically, but he's not that fast mentally, which is very interesting because he comes from a football family. His father, Pharrell Edmonds, of course, had 1 year as a Pro Bowler playing with Dan Marino as a tight end. So I'm a little disappointed in how Tremaine has done a little better, but neither of them has quite hit the heights people were expecting. But
they're
he has
both
a new
first-round picks too, and they're both on their second. In the case of Terrell, his third team.
Yep. And they have a chance to, one more chance to sort of reboot things to get it going. But this is probably his last chance to be thought of as a frontline player. But to me, what's going to happen eventually is one of these teams is going to commit the big mistake and or make a big play, and possibly both simultaneously. So
looks like Levis almost did that with a fumble, huh?
Right. So a fumble, an intercept, strip sack, interception, that kind of thing. The Steelers in almost every single game they've won had either a score from the defense or a score that was set up by the defense. They don't have enough offense to win games without it, quite frankly.
There's a tweet. Najee Harris equals bust. Kenny Pickett equals bust. Would you guys respond to that?
It's still very early. Granted, to be fair, the QBR metric isn't the kindest to Kenny Pickett. Doesn't help that the offense as a whole has not really been able to get it going. Same with Najee Harris. It's always risky in today's day to take a running back in the first round, especially as so many different teams use running back by committee as opposed to like a pure running back like how the Titans have used Derrick Henry or like how the Browns used Nick Chubb. You usually see more of these running back by committee kind of players. And so you don't really see many taken in the first round, like in the middle of the first round, like Najee Harris was. As for Kenny, like it was a weak quarterback draft class that he was taken in. He was the best one, but granted, he was not. But even then, there's still some questions whether or not he was the best one. But still, he was taken in the first round. He's a Pittsburgh kid. So far, he's done well.
New Jersey kid, but
he went to Pitt. He went to Pitt.
He went to Pitt, right? He's from New Jersey.
He's from Jersey, but but
Ocean
I think
City.
that Pickett, we still got to see a little bit more. I still think it's his job to lose before the end of the season. I still think he'll be the starter by the end of the season.
He's not going to lose the job this season unless he gets seriously injured, and even then, it'll just be lost temporarily. The Steelers, for what are many things, but they don't pull the trigger quickly, so he'll get plenty of chances. Plus, they don't really have any better options. But I don't know if you've seen their backup quarterback situation, but it's not the tastiest. So really what they have to do is create better situations around him. He's effective enough, but he's not a guy who's going to lift a team on his shoulders. He's not a guy that's going to overcome other things. The other things that I wanted to mention.
Steelers are on the move, by the way. They're at the Titans 40.
The other thing I want to mention is that if you're going to spend a early round draft pick on a running back, you would want to make it at least an explosive back, and that's not what Najee is. Yeah, even in high school, where he was dominant, he was just bludgeoning people. He wasn't explosive even then. So at De La Salle, he was, essentially just running through guys who are, sometimes 20, 30 pounds lighter than him, especially once he got to the second level. He had a terrific offensive line. They smashed people. And then he got to the second level. He just ran over guys he outweighed. And when he got to Alabama, maybe not quite the same size disparity, but once again, a great offensive line that leveled people. And then he got to the second level and did damage.
Bill, I got to ask you, how much of his accolades that propelled him to be drafted when he was have to do with a singular leap?
Not much. But they do have to do with the fact that he's been consistently overrated from high school onward. That more than anything else.
But doesn't that add to the overrating?
Not much. No. I mean, because that's not how scouts work. You're expected to do hours and hours and hours of cut-ups on a player. You look at their best games, their worst games, how they do it against players that you think will play at the next level. You want to have at least 6 games over multiple seasons against guys where they're matched against high levels of competition. One play, no matter how amazing that play be, does not change an evaluation. Fans might get all excited about it, but that's not how it goes.
So that leads me to this question then. If I watch this YouTube video of the Rose Bowl And then there's this guy I've never heard named JD and Clowney knocking a helmet off of a Michigan running back.
Yeah, Vincent Brown. But okay,
yeah,
so
I'm saying there's a little bit of that emotional factor. But I'm
but
saying that, and not necessarily for the scouts, but for the team owners that pressure these people to say, "Hey,
oh yeah,
right."
maybe for team owners. But remember, he was
that's all I'm
the
saying.
number. But remember, he was the number one high school prospect overall in the nation. So it wasn't like he was a revelation to anybody who follows football.
No, right.
He
I want to be clear. I'm not attempting to gaslight what you're saying. I'm saying that, yeah, it's the giant chalkboard with the professor at the bottom who is your scout in this case. And he's writing all these equations, right? And then he said, but you just add tonic. It's a little bit of that. That's all I'm saying.
Right. But I mean, he's a guy that everybody had been talking about since he was 15 years old. It's like Trevor Lawrence. Everyone's talking about Trevor Lawrence. He was 15. He might have been less than 15 the first time I watched Trevor Lawrence on tape when he was a ninth grader. So some players, back in Lawrenceville, Georgia.
That's why we have Bill Carroll here, folks.
So some players, everyone's known about forever. People know about Jamin Clowney forever. And you add to it, that Steve Spurrier is comparing him as a freshman to Javon Curse. So everyone's heard about him for a very long time. And then he goes and has a terrific combine. What people forget is that he had bone spurs and he was on a pitch count even in high school and in college. And bone spurs are a reoccurring condition. You don't get cured ever. If you have bone spurs, you have bone spurs till you die. So they've always had to manage him in practices in high school and in college. They always had to manage him forever. So the reason, at least part of the reason that he's never been quite what people are expecting is that, and then he had microfracture surgery. If there's two words you never want to hear about a player that you have, it's microfracture and surgery. Right.
Yeah.
So
that's why some people are trying to say, oh, Trevor Lawrence is a bust. Like, he's not why would Trevor Lawrence be a bust? He's still been good.
No. So since I got you guys out, here's
were you saying Najee Harris or Trevor Lawrence with that?
Well, I'm saying Najee Harris. It's not a bust, but he's never going to be what people were expecting because their expectations were inaccurate.
Oh, I see.
Okay, I'll say this about the game. A lot of people, arguably so, are ecstatic over the play of Will Levis. Regardless of this game, he's got his bandwagon.
Sure.
But what's left out of this is, and I was imagining this is occurring, where someone would ask me, okay, Zennie, you were critical of the idea of taking Will Levis at the fourth pick. Do you regret that? And my answer is no. And they would say, why? And I'll tell you why. Because the Will Levis then is not this Will Levis. That's why. And here's what I mean. There's a great article that happened on ESPN that focused on the time that Mike Vrabel ordered to be taken to develop both Will Levis and the great one from Liberty, Malik Willis. Okay. But the difference and the reason why Will wound up starting was that even though Malik went 7 of 8 in the Sunday game, he also let a wayward, bad shotgun snap sail over his head. Why? Because he's shorter and less athletic vertically up and down than Levis, who just simply had to reach up and get the bad snap because he's got, gorilla arms, right?
Yeah.
And so the decision was made this was in preseason, I'm sorry. So the decision was made to make sure that both quarterbacks were ready in case Tannehill went down to the point where he was unavailable. And so the kind of play that we see from Levis of late is the result of during the season practices and working on him with receivers that were available because, as Mike Vrabel, the head coach of the Titans, pointed out, they don't have a lot of people available they can work on. They should have an extra 10 people, at least.
Right.
Paid,
let's
go ahead.
Let's give some credit to Charles London in his second tour of duty with the Titans. Was back with the team back until 2011. Most recently was with the Falcons, working with Desmond Ridder. He's had a reputation for having success in working with young quarterbacks. He is the passing game coordinator as well as the offensive. I mean, was the quarterbacks coach, and has also worked running backs. I remember him in his time here with the Bears there in Chicago, where he helped to develop Jordan Howard, Tariq Cohen, David Montgomery. Were all players that had their best years under him. So was a running back himself, a fine running back in his day, and helped to develop a lot of good running backs. So what I'll say is that I hope one.
By the way, if to help him out, here's the man he's talking about right there. That's Charles London.
Yes. I hope Charles London at some point gets his chance to sit in the big chair. I hope he gets to get a head coaching opportunity. So if he has success with Will Levis, that will give him a better chance to do that. Will Levis's issue was never either physical talent or even mental acuity. His issue was being a little too overeager to try to what I call greediness, right? His eyes were bigger than his stomach, as my great grandmother used to say.
Showboat.
I wouldn't even say showboat, just a guy that was trying to make the biggest play. And
Showboat.
when he began to, I think it's more like always seeing things based on, I think I can jam it in there, right? I mean, we talked about Brett Favre and sort of the generation of quarterbacks that grew up watching him. And what he's learned is that,
it's like Terry Bradshaw.
And a lot of other young quarterbacks with big arms. I mean, young John Elway. I mean, it's a long list.
Or Jameis Winston.
Right, a long list of young, strong arm. Jay Cutler. We could do this all night. But what I'd like to note is look at the passes he's hit to people like Kyle Phillips underneath. His development has been in working the underneath and intermediate areas where he used to be, frankly, bad. He's always had a great deep ball. He's always been able to gun it in there into tight windows, throw that bang eight, that big arm, deep comeback, those deep outs. Luscious, right? Where he struggled in the past was things like seam routes, sit routes, things that are supposed to be, quote unquote, easier, but they weren't easier because he was always late on them, because he would first be holding on to the chance to get the big play, and then late would come off to the things that are broken open, and then they weren't open, right? By the time you get to them, it's like the old joke about, when you're boxing against someone who's pretty good defensively, by the time you see the opening, it's not open. So he's sped up his eyes and slowed down his desire to try to score every time the ball leaves his hands. And that's what's helped him to bridge that gap between, as you said, the Will Levis you saw deep dropping linebackers in the chest with the ball as if he were throwing a javelin into their chest. He's moved away from some of that. He's slowed down on some of that. And if he can continue,
But he just loves doing it though.
Well, when you're a young, super strong arm quarterback, and in an offense that, it's not like their passing attack was the most dynamic. They had a really good run game, Chris Rodriguez, and they had at one point they had a good offensive line that fell apart later in his time there at Kentucky, partially due to actually literally losing their offensive line coach, who sadly died of cancer. He fought through a lot of that. He took a lot of hits. He's a courageous person. He has some unusual peccadillos, as they've talked about, but some of that's just stuff I think he sort of did to sort of raise his Q level, as they might say in television work. But the most important thing is he's learning that you don't have to try to win the game with each throw. And that's something that young quarterbacks sometimes don't seem to realize. Anthony Richardson's learning that. A lot of these young quarterbacks are all learning on the fly. You don't have to win the game with each throw. Just keep maneuvering the ball down the field, matriculating the ball down the field, as the late Hamstram used to say. Right. Leonard. I think if we go at 65, toss bar, it'll pop wide open. But yeah, I watched that one way too many times. But the thing about baby, I told you, 65 toss power trap. But with Jack Holmes blocking for him and Mike Garrett swiveling hip behind. But yeah, I've seen that play too many times. But the thing about the development of young quarterbacks, Pickett's a young, old quarterback in that he was an older quarterback entering the draft. But these are still guys who are figuring things out on the fly. And when you are trying to figure out, first of all, how not to lose games, right? Because that's their first job as a young quarterback. They shouldn't be asking you to win games, at least not initially. But they're usually asking you not to lose games. And Will Levis, first of all, that's the most important thing. He hasn't crashed the car, right? He hasn't driven
Now,
into a ditch.
FanDuel asked this question:
Yep.
Will Levis or Kenny Pickett?
Well,
It's early right now. I mean,
It's
Pickett's
way
played
early.
way more games.
right.
As
This
now,
is what they got out there, folks.
Here's what I will say: the more talented of the two is Will Levis. So if you're
Will Levis is more talented.
if you're an upside play person, you're going to take Levis. So I guess that's as close to an answer as you're going to get out of me. If you just want to swing for the fences, go for the upside. Will Levis is the more physically talented person. He can do things that Kenny Pickett can't do.
Who's got the better looking girlfriend?
Well, that's an interesting question.
I don't even know their girlfriends.
I'll vote Will Levis.
Sure, why not?
Yeah, sure.
I guess based on the South, based on more exposure in the southern exposure.
Based on just opinion.
Oh, okay. The other thing that's
I have
interesting
no
to me,
idea about all that stuff.
the other thing that's interesting to me is we also DeAndre Nuke Hopkins was already able to turn back the clock in the last game. But at this point in his career, if you play zone or you play off, you're playing into his strengths. He was a 4.57 coming out, and he hasn't gotten faster, I promise you. So the way to deal with him is you have long, strong corners is to press, redirect, and make him fight so that the timing is destroyed. He's not going to run past you. And even in his prime, he wasn't a guy that tended to run past people, though he could sometimes sort of trick people a little bit, who would get a little too lazy or a little too comfortable. But if you press, and redirect, you're going to keep him to, if he does get the ball, contested catches that are close to the line of scrimmage.
So does this mean that is Tannehill gone for good?
Gone for good.
Tannehill's contract's up after this year, so I don't think they're going to keep him.
Right, they're not keeping him. No matter what happened. Even if none of their young quarterbacks worked out, they were just going to draft another one. So Tannehill was gone no matter what. If Will Levis looks like he's the quarterback of the future, that just means that the good news is Tannehill becomes that veteran voice in his ear, which he could use. And it'll help him to hopefully sort of grow into being an NFL starter. And Tannehill will find work again, I promise you, as a bridge guy with some other team. There's teams that I promise you will want to bring in a guy like that. He is a solid professional with a lot of knowledge. He's started a lot of games. He's been through a lot of adversity. He can be what Alex Smith was for Patrick Mahomes. He can be what, I guess now what even Aaron Charles Rodgers is now trying to do for Mr. Wilson. But you want to have, when you have a young starter, you want to be able to throw. You want to be able to throw him into a situation where at least he's got some veteran voice in his ear, who's going to help him to see things, right? And your offensive coordinator and your quarterback's coach can help him to a certain extent. But when you have someone who has stood exactly where he stood, behind the exact offensive line he stood behind, throwing to the exact same receivers, there's a perspective that even goes beyond what the coaches can provide.
I'm going to ask this question, even though it's off topic, but I'm going to take it anyway, just out of respect for the fact that he chimed in to say something. Timothy Ryan asks, Zennie, what do you think of the Port of Oakland and their effort to hold a press conference to keep the A's? I think it's stupid. And the reason is, look, the city of Oakland has had 5 years to assemble an enhanced infrastructure financing district, to start a stadium authority, or at least convert the current authority into stadium authority, and I can go on. But what you're seeing here is politics to get people like you asking me that question, who have no idea how this is supposed to work, and yet making fun of the Las Vegas Stadium Authority, who's showing us twice now how it's done. What is going on in Las Vegas is standard for what stadium authorities around the country are supposed to do. It's done in Pittsburgh for the stadium that is being used for the game that we're talking about right now. Yeah. It was done in Las Vegas to create Allegiant Stadium. It's being done right now by the Nashville and Stadium Authority for the state of Tennessee. Wake up, will you? Okay? Because you all who are A's fans in Oakland are not Raiders fans. You don't come to the government meetings. You don't pay attention to how things are done. And then you wait 2 years. I told you 2 years the A's were leaving. I called it on the 25th of November, I blasted it out there. You all didn't pay any attention. I'm telling you, when things are going down the wrong road, I had the mayor on, Libby Schaff, telling my god sister, telling us that they don't have the staff to use tax increment financing, yet we're going to use enhanced infrastructure financing districts, which is tax increment financing, which means what? You don't understand what you're doing, okay? So my point is, I'm going to get back to the show, but I want to be absolutely definitive about this and then take this little piece and bring it out as a separate video to let you all know to stop going for the Oakland government okie doke. It's politician after politician after politician, and that's not how it's done. All right, returning to our conversation.
Yeah, like again, going with the A's. Listen, the A's aren't staying in Oakland, and Oakland's not going to get an expansion team. It's not going to happen. Like, we can hope and dream all we
get an
want.
expansion team though. If we fight, don't say it ain't going to happen. I'll fight anybody on that one. I'll fight a million people.
Okay, but they're not keeping the A's. That's for sure. They're not keeping the A's.
No, I'm not keeping the A's, but expansion. We have to fight, Benny. We have to.
No, I meant the A's themselves. Like they're gonna go to Vegas. That's what.
No, but we're gonna get an expansion. We can. Let me put it this way. I mean, yeah, Vinny, you're right. Okay, but anyway, getting back to the Steelers, I'll just say you're right. And I'll let you have that one, so I can get on and Bill can stop doing neck contortions.
No, it's okay. Don't worry. Don't worry.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Well, one of the things you are seeing is how much losing both Cam Sutton and Minkah Fitzpatrick have affected the Steelers' secondary in terms of how they would handle passing off those interior. What we talk about Kyle Phillips and how effective he's been. Some of that is them missing Minkah Fitzpatrick, who is probably the second most important player on defense for that team. And then the other thing is Cam Sutton, who, of course, was allowed to leave via free agency, and they have not adequately filled his role. I believe they'll be addressing it in the draft. I believe they will have to go out and draft a slot corner, a nickelback, because in the modern NFL, even if you have two excellent corners, and they have one excellent corner and one to be determined, I think that as we watch Joey Porter Jr. develop, he has a chance to be great. Patrick Peterson was great in the past. And they tried to squeeze one more year out of him, but it's clear that as great as he was, there's no more great juice left in that particular Peterson to be squeezed out. So he's hopefully giving sage advice and things like that, but he's just not he's not sudden enough. He's not quick enough. He still has straight line speed, but his reaction time is slowed a little bit, and it shows visibly when you watch him play.
Yeah, like Patrick Peterson. Patrick Peterson, I thought, was the best corner of the last decade. Of course, part of that wonderful 2011 draft class, Pro Bowler, and like his first 8 years. Definitely a lock for Canton, no question in my mind. He's definitely Canton bound. But this orange has no more juice. We've juiced enough juice out of this orange. It's just skin and pulp at this point. You're not getting anything else, and I'm happy he's there for veteran leadership, but his time as a full-blown starter are behind him. Now he could play longer if he wants, but probably knows there's not much time left.
I unless he's going to become a safety, and once again, that's more difficult than people believe it to be. I just don't see how he would continue to play because he's no longer at the point where he can flip his hips and turn and run with people who are 10 years and less, sometimes more than 10 years his junior. And like I said, the success that they're having, they're attacking him. Like that would have been unthinkable 6 years ago, but they're attacking him. They're moving away from attacking Joey Porter Jr. as much and concentrating more and more of their passing attack on Patrick Peterson, which makes sense because he's the weak spot or one of the weak spots in that defense. Their nickel and Patrick Peterson are now the guys you want to go after, and then the other safety, since they don't have Minkah Fitzpatrick, and they didn't address the position at the trade deadline. Kevin Byard could be lining up for them in this game if they wanted to make that move, but here they are. They're going to have to try to get it done with the guys they have.
Now, for those of you who might be interested, which probably is the majority of you, as this goes on. There is. We're talking about Patrick Peterson, right, Mr. Carroll and Mr. Laspinoso?
Yes.
Okay. So you may not know, but you will know after a few seconds that, yes, that is correct. LSU's Patrick Peterson was on Zennie62. Ta-da! When he was drafted.
Nice.
Yeah. That's what I'm
Yeah.
talking about. All right.
Indeed.
Here he is. Okay. Right here, talking about NFL and the Niners. People thought the Niners were going to get him at first.
Well,
Remember
he
that,
went to
Bill?
the NFC West at least.
Anybody is definitely deserving to. Everybody who's in that top 5 and that top 10 in the secondary, I mean, it's definitely a place to be.
Tell me a little bit more about Prince. I cover the Lions. I mean, he's a guy that's, maybe on their board. What are they getting if they get him and you think could be there at 13?
Tremendous athlete. Yeah, tremendous athlete. I believe Prince is a 4-year senior.
Yeah.
So a guy that knows the ins and the outs about the cornerback position. He got a year on me, but I mean, a guy that's going to come in and work. A guy that's going to come in and work, give it his all, and make plays.
And off the field, what's his personality like?
Oh man, Prince, he's a laid-back guy. He kind of remind me of my brother. We call my brother an old soul. With Prince, he have a lot more energy, but he's kind of like an old soul. That's matter of fact, he out there.
Jimmy Smith, you know him? I'm sorry, one more. Jimmy Smith.
Jimmy Smith, we talked briefly after him.
You visited the 49ers not too long ago. Your thoughts about Jim Harbaugh and the organization? What did you think when you visited?
The organization is well put together. Coach Jim has tremendous energy. I mean, he's a guy who I would love to have as a coach. I mean, he's a guy, you can tell that he's very, very into the game. He loves the game. He loves his players. He's a player's coach. Things like that. I mean, I think he's a very special coach, and he will do special things in years to come.
Is there any other coach you compare him to that you've had, or is he kind of somebody
that I had?
Yeah.
Some people say what?
Good
He's
question.
one of a kind.
He's definitely
Some
one of
Cal fans say other things, but to know the story. So.
I mean, I believe he's one of a kind.
Good question, though.
Every coach has their own personality, have their own identity. But I mean, he's definitely one of a kind of a coach. I mean, one of a kind of coach, and a coach I love to play for.
How's your draft experience going?
Going great. I mean,
First time in New York?
Nah, I've been here a couple times. But draft experience wonderful. And, just happy that I'm here and my family here to spend it with.
Did you end up visiting the Lions? I know they tried to get you into it. No?
Did.
I don't know. Talking to them trading up, and they tried to get you in or something late.
Actually, the only time I talked to the Lions, they called for my draft information, for my phone number and my agent's number.
That's it.
That's it. That's it, because that was my second.
I'm going to stop right there because you addressed my question, but that was when a number of people thought that he was going to be a 49er, but it could happen where he winds up playing for Harbaugh all over again. So keep that soundbite in mind, folks.
It could potentially happen.
Right, Bill? Right, Vinny? Right?
Hey, anything's possible, I'd say.
Anything is possible. It could happen.
I'm trying to imagine what he'd be doing at that point. I mean,
Well, maybe I can
like
think of
next year, you mean?
I mean, that you could see, like I said, how diminished, a player he is now from what he once was. I can't imagine a year from now or almost a year from now when, I don't know. We'll see what happens, but
yeah, because
I'll just view it as more.
Well, you've heard it before. Well, we got him because of his leadership qualities.
Yeah, that's the reason.
Right. But I mean, are you planning to just keep him on the sidelines for leadership or in the locker room for leadership? Because at some point, guys get hurt. If you have to throw him out there, he's going to be a liability. But
that's a good question. Look at what Mike Mayock did with Cleveland Farrell. He said, first paragraph, you're laughing because he said it.
I'm laughing because you're making my point for me. Because you're making my point for me.
He said it's going to be an example.
That's why you shouldn't.
And a leader, okay? And
now you're saying why you shouldn't do that. Because at some point you have to play football.
I thought it was ridiculous. I thought Cleveland Farrell was a reach. So I wasn't for Cleveland Farrell.
He was a reach.
I'm saying that there are coaches who think that way.
I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. I'm just saying that's
millions of women. I'm not going to spend millions of dollars on a guy at the top of the draft heap when I can get somebody better, like I can get Devin White, okay? Instead, all right, and you know I'm right, all right, because Devin White would have been a home wrecker for the Raiders. And so anyway,
definitely,
you know
definitely.
it.
Cleveland Farrell was a reach. Even
but if I'm talking about a guy that I have to spend far less on later in life, where I can, keep him on the, you doggone right, keep him on the sidelines for a little bit of money, knowing he can come in when it's time and give me his all, and it matters in different ways, I'll take that spin. That's a good spin. That's a smart investment then. But it wasn't a smart investment back at that point.
Here's the issue.
No way.
Reserve defensive backs have to be able to play special teams. So if you're bringing a 37-year-old man to play special teams, I mean, I would say he won't do it. Who knows? Maybe he's open to it.
That's not a Bible rule. It's not even an NFL rule.
No, it's not a rule, but it's a roster construction rule.
So
backup defensive backs play special teams.
So excuse me, where are the roster construction police? They don't exist. I create my own doggone roster, pal. This is the way that I see it.
I get what you're saying, but so how are you filling that hole?
Everybody thought like you thought there would be no Oakland A's, there would be no Moneyball, there would be no analytics, there would be no.
But this is analytics. Like you need players who are young and athletic to play special teams.
It's not analytics.
Actually, it is because I'm going to explain something to you. The reason, do you know why? Do you know why we have the? Why do we have the 40?
Simply because you're not.
Why do we have Zennie
in the locker room?
Why do we have the? Why do we have
There are some people who do scenario planning, okay, who understand how to scenario when a person, a place, or the weather is going to appear, because that's really what we're asked to do as people who are trained like I do. And we look at multi-dimensions. We don't look at the one that you think you're familiar with, that in point of fact, I've done. So my
you can
point
only
is
dress so many players on game days, Zennie. You only dress so many players on game day. The reason we have, so now you're saying I can only dress 7 offensive linemen. Like a player has to go from somewhere, Zennie. So, if you have a backup defensive back who can't play special teams, you're cutting someone from somewhere on your game day roster.
It's going
to hurt you somewhere.
I want Peterson. I told you what I want.
You can want what you want. I'm explaining to you what that means.
Yeah, but I'm the owner. It matters to me, and I'm the guy who runs.
Of course it matters, but that's why owners shouldn't meddle. But the point is, of course they do, but I'm saying they should not.
And
you're making my point for me.
I haven't.
Because this person has warm feelings for this great player who was once great.
You don't own a team. You're not working for the teams, okay? Just be honest, all right? And my point is...
I'm being honest. I'm telling you how the math works.
Bill, that's not how the math works.
It is how the math... You can only dress so many players, Zennie. That's math.
Okay, so you want to put it that way. Which one of us had a head coach to wait for plays from them, from me, to them? It wasn't you. It was me.
That has nothing to do with.
It has
which one of us has actually? Which one has actually worked for a college football program? That's me.
I have too. I've done that too. I've done that too.
I was a graduate assistant working for Lou Tepper.
But I worked for Cal, and not only that, on top of all that, I was equipment manager in high school. I can go back and back. My point is this.
Okay, awesome. But let's get back to the math. Who are you getting rid of to have your extra defensive back who doesn't play special teams? Who has to go?
Which kind of math is that, Bill?
It is game day math. It's game day math. You can only dress so many players.
Write it down.
I'm in the middle of all this, so I'm in the middle of all this. So I'll just say my thoughts on the matter. Listen, if Patrick Peterson's in a 1-year deal, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's a 1-year deal with the Steelers. Now, because Patrick Peterson has a long history of exceptional play in the NFL, it would not shock me if a team were going to give him another 1-year deal to play somewhere else.
Thank you.
Granted, now, do I think he is going to have another Pro Bowl, all-pro level season? No, those years are behind him.
Right.
But it wouldn't shock me. But
I'm right.
No, I'm saying is you can't have him active. You can have him on your team, but you can't activate him.
No. I don't want to. You can't tell me what I can't do.
I'm saying
so
in general.
So who are you not dressing? You understand? If you dress him, a player who can't
not talking about what I would do. I'm talking
I'll
about what I
figure
think
that
would
out.
happen.
That's
Yeah,
your
yeah.
answer.
In fact, I would want you, and you laugh, but you think you're such the analyst, then solve the question for me. All right? Figure it out. If you can't figure it out, then you're not an
So
analyst.
I already answered the question. It means you can only have 7 offensive linemen. I already said. So now you're getting rid of one of your offensive linemen you
I
could
am
have
telling
dressed.
you to figure it out.
I just did. Like I'm saying, so you can only dress 7 offensive linemen.
He would be a backup defensive
You
back,
can
though. He
pick
wouldn't be one of
anybody.
the starters. That's for
You
sure.
can pick anybody, Bill. You know that.
Okay, but whoever you're picking, that's one less of.
What does that mean? What does that mean? It means
It means that you're hurting yourself somewhere. Is what it means, Zennie.
There's no rule. You just established that.
What I'm telling you is that,
and what I'm trying to explain to you is the same thing I tried to explain. Remember, we had the good man who did the mock drafts, who did the techniques and stuff that brought the techniques. Mike, I forgot his name. Doesn't matter. My point is, the draft. Some draftniks think that there's only one way to do things, and they're consistently shocked by the fact that, you know what? There's all kinds of ways to do things, and it's what we want. We'll come up with a rationale, and this argument proves. This is why I'm pushing the argument, because Mr. Carroll has his rationale, and I have mine. And my point is, we'll do the rationale.
My rationale is that you're either losing an offensive lineman or you're losing a linebacker. Somebody's not going to dress because you have someone who can't play special teams.
Oh, see, in the middle of this, Bill. In the middle of this is Vinny. So Vinny now becomes the judge.
Okay.
All right, now I gotta say this. Yeah, he the quarter swing. He's just about ready to do that thing. He don't want no kills. He don't want no lies.
As the judge, I order in the court.
No alibis. This hip, and that ain't all. And brother, he'll give you time. You're big or small. So stand in line. This court is neat. Right on. Here come the judge. That's Vin.
Yes. Okay, so Zennie just lost us the 18 to 34 demographic. But go ahead, please, Vin.
No. As the judge, I have order in this court. Okay. Now, as for, I personally have no investment into what Patrick Peterson wants to do. If he wants to retire, go right ahead. If he wants to keep playing, go right ahead. Could a team sign him? Yeah, if they can. I don't really care either way. The way I see it is, if someone's going to sign him to their roster, it would probably be for experience, and we would probably be a reserve guy. Now, I'm not someone who's an expert in coaching. I'm not someone who's an expert in play design. I'm not someone who's an expert in scouting. But you also need to know that his best days are behind him. Know that he'd be in there as a backup, rotational defensive back at best. That's all I'm going to say. If you want to sign him, go right ahead. We're going to not have instead. But also, if you do want to have him, you know what's your game plan for him? It's basically with any kind of position.
I'll take Travis Hunter to play two-way.
yeah, it depends on what he wants to do, and it's also his decision too. Like, we could talk about the coaches and owners and everything else, but we also want to know if he wants to play the game next year. And I think,
knowing that, I'll go to the NFL owners meeting, and I'll get the competition committee to vote on an adjustment, and you know what? Problem solved.
Hey, whatever happens.
Yeah, baby. That's what I'm talking about.
The way I see it,
that's what I'm talking about.
I wouldn't laugh either way.
You change the rules to meet your objective.
That's happened sometimes in the past. I'm not going to hold it against anyone. I mean,
that's the only way to roll, man. That's why it's important to pay attention to legislation.
Exactly. Sure. That's why I always vote every single year, and I vote early too. I always vote.
This is
well, I can't vote often. That'd be illegal.
As it is, never accept the world as it is. Always work to make it your own.
Exactly. That's how I see it too. Because I didn't go to college to just keep the status quo the same. No, I went to school because I want to challenge the status quo.
That's why I'm challenging the status quo, and Mr. Carroll represents the status quo. So there you go.
Oh, that's not exactly true. But what I do represent is someone who's played special teams most of his career.
Status quo.
No, I'm just saying that's what I did. I played special teams most of my career.
Status quo.
And I was a reserve defensive back.
I was an analyst.
Good for
I
you.
went back. You know what? I went out to be a quarterback in high school.
Don't
behind the
insult each
great
other,
Kenny
guys.
Johnson and
No, it's
Skylar,
not even an insult. I'm
but I
just
was so
saying
busy
that
trying to get this cheerleader, and I knew the plays that Coach Friedel were calling were not working, but I was changing them on the field. So Friedel got pissed off with me and made me a deal and say, "You be my equipment manager, and I'll use your plays." And guess what? It worked. Trouble is, I didn't get the cheerleader.
well,
So there you go.
That's a heartwarming tale. When you have a team, you're looking at who can be a gunner, who can cover this, who can be on pump block. The person who decides, right, on your roster, those last 5 or 6 spots is your special teams coordinator. Because, you've got offensive and defensive figured out their first and second string, right? That's about 44 guys. You got a punter and a kicker. And then you got a long snapper. So that gets you to about 47. You're allowed to carry a total of 55. Those last few spots, who makes the call on who those last few spots are? That's your defensive coordinator. He says, I need this guy because he's on 4 of my special teams units. This guy's terrific on PAT block. This guy's a terrific blocker. This guy's terrific at busting the wedge. So you, at some point, have to remember there's 3 phases, not 2 phases to football.
Yeah, I
Special
got you.
teams is one of the 3 phases.
Let's move on from that one. In fact, let's take us out so we can watch the rest of this game. We got that one. That's why I made Vinny the judge. He is the end. So, Judge, close us out. Make your decision before the bailiff comes here and arrests us all for not finishing on time.
The way I kind of said it before, like if he wants to continue playing, he can continue playing. I think Patrick Peterson's best days are behind him. It's a decision based on the coaches, the executives, maybe even the ownership if they want to continue. Like again, I personally don't care what Patrick Peterson does next year personally. So I'm sort of just on the fence, indifferent. I don't really have a dog in the fight. I will say that I think what's more important is that this game is currently 16-13 Titans. The Titans have a chance to go 4-4. Could they still be in play for a wild card berth? I mean, that division, you could potentially see a team that finishes second be one of the wild card teams. Potentially, nothing guaranteed, but it could happen. Could this happen for the Titans? Zennie, what do you think? And what do you think?
I just want to say, as we close out, join us Sunday and to talk more about this. But also, I want to follow up on something Bill's mentioning. Get to know this man, Charles London, because very often when you hear about past in-game coordinators in the NFL, they're white. Obviously, he is not. And people need to know that there are many talented African Americans at positions less than the place of head coach or even coordinator who are not getting their due and not getting their shot, and they don't get talked about enough. And I have to commend Thursday Night Football for mentioning Charles London and my friend Bill Carroll, and for bringing Charles London up in our conversation yet again, so I can present this because, in case you didn't know, and it's really important to know, folks, the problem of diversity or lack thereof in the league is still a problem with some teams, and it's an extensive problem. I'll give you a quick example as we close out to buttress my point. Here is the front office staff of the New Orleans Saints. It is 86% white, middle-aged white male, 1 white female. All right. These are the people that are behind why, Taysom Hill seems like he's getting his reps and he's getting all of this, or that who may have driven Sean Payton out of New Orleans to take a job in Denver where Russell Wilson, a black quarterback, is the star, and yet the Saints bring in Derek Carr, who doesn't pan out, and everybody's asking questions and pointing fingers. And then at the same time, they're also telling some fibs about Jameis Winston. It is a blank show over there, and these people at the helm of it. This is completely different, I might add, from an example that you might find surprising. All of you, including the ones might find surprising. I'll show this real quick, but it is to be noted because it's not talked about much either. And it's right here in the form of your organization that just sacked their entire. I say entire. I mean the whole 9 yards. Not these guys, all right, but the other guys sacked their entire staff and made it so it's like, hey, you know what? We are not going to go through this anymore because we're going to get back to who we were. And if you're wondering who that organization is, I'm going to tell you right now and show you at this point. And as long as my internet decides it's not going to work, that's a problem. And so it's deciding it's not going to work. Brilliant. Let me close this out. Nope, wait a minute. Here it is. Decide it's going to work at the last minute. There we are. All right, now we are here. And then I can show you, and you're going to say, ooh, when you see it. And the oohs will be appropriate. And you're going to say, oh, yeah, because that'll be appropriate too. And here we are with your Las Vegas Raiders. Look at that. A significant part of this organization is either female or black. Compare that to the Saints, okay? This is the situation we have today. And so it's literally a minefield out there in the National Football League with some teams, choosing to stay with the status quo, if you will, and others choosing to be on the cutting edge, like the Raiders. So there you go. And in the middle of that is our conversation about people like Mr. London, right, Bill?
Yep. And I'm extremely happy for Antonio Pierce. I can tell this is a job he's wanted probably since he was in his teens, grew up a fan of the team, back when the team was in Los Angeles, went to games, has been a fan of the team for, most of his life, prior to his adult life, throughout most of his life period. And I hope that both he and Champ Kelly are given a fair shot. Anthony Champ Kelly, who has a fascinating, resume, a guy with, a master's degree in software engineering, business, and computer science from Kentucky, was a guy who played both offense and defense, sort of like our friend Bucky Brooks. In his days at Kentucky, played some defensive back as well as playing wide receiver. At one point was the general manager, wide receivers coach, and wide receiver for the UIF's Lexington Horsemen.
A lot of responsibility.
Yes. Yes, it is.
Sounds heck of illegal, man. What's up with that?
Yeah. So yes. I mean, you have to go back to like Curly Lambeau and Charles and Hallis to find somebody who's like GM, a coach and a player. But he did this, and of course, 3 times his team made it to the bowl game, to the championship. They won once and finished second twice. So he had success even very early in his professional football career on the United Indoor Football League. A guy with also a real heart for service, has started a successful non-for-profit. His wife and he are very involved in charitable activities. And like I said, this has been a long time coming. He spent a lot of years in Denver's organization, working his way all the way from area scout to, assistant director of pro personnel, and then eventually became a pro personnel director. Was terrific in his time as terrific as one can be within the McCaskey's organization. His time with the Bears, and like I said, was in the right place in the right time when he decided to go to Las Vegas. I do hope, once again, that this is a real opportunity and not just sort of something that's being done to say you did it. Because if he's given a real chance, I believe he'll succeed.
Wow. All right. That's a great one. All right. So closing out, folks. Thank you. Back to the contest. All right. Hey, that ends this broadcast. Folks, subscribe to Zennie62 on YouTube and bookmark OaklandNewsNowBlog.com and Zennie62blog.com. We'll see you. That was fun.